Welcome to another edition of the Calgary Sessions. This is episode number 10. I'm your host, Jeff Humphreys. This week's guest, I say this all the time. Well, not all the time. Every guest I have in front of me, because they're usually a good friend right now. Good friend of mine. We go back to, we were probably 12 or 13 years old.
Yep.
So like 30 years ago, I met this character. And another successful Calgarian, and was on my Rolodex to get on the show early. So I'll let him introduce himself, name, and where he's working.
Cool. Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, my name is Shaun Ford. I'm the owner and operator of Shaun Ford Company. We're a design firm and procurement service company based out of Calgary, but we do work kind of all over the place.
Cool. So like I said, Shaun and I go back to the hockey days. When I think of, when I first met Shaun, we were playing Pee Wee, and Elbow Park was a smaller community. And when we got to that age, we had to combine the associations. So Shaun and some other characters, Scott King and some other good hockey players, came into Trails West. Yeah. And all of a sudden there's way more good players in the mix. And we're like, shit, where'd these guys come from?
Yeah.
So anyways, me and Shaun, we both played left wing. And the other thing that we had in common was we both wanted the same number.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. That's hilarious.
So we always, hockey players, or maybe athletes in general, are kind of superstitious, and they have their little quirks and little things. Numbers is obviously a big piece of it. Yeah. So anyways, we both love number 12.
Hakan Loob.
Yep. and I can't remember how we always decided, because you and I played on the same teams, 3 or 4 times. Yeah. And I can't remember how you and I determined who got what. I don't know if it was a draw or something, but anyways, that was that's my first memory of Shaun Ford.
Tidbit. Oh my God, that's so funny, man. I didn't even remember that until right now, so that's funny.
So the show is what I like to do with all these guests is just kind of take them back, just kind of hear your story. Mm-hmm. I kind of know your story a little bit. There's obviously a big gap from we didn't see each other, didn't talk to each other, just because we're just doing different things. But just kind of go back. You're an entrepreneur. You've been doing your own thing for a long time. Mm-hmm. Hopefully you touch on the decks and fences and stuff, because that's when I some of the stuff you did back then was crazy. So anyways, just go back as far as you want to go, coming up playing sports, or where your inspiration started to kind of shape when you realize you want to do your own thing. So just back it up.
All right, well, that's funny. And actually I want to hit on, you were always the guy with the cool car.
Yes.
Yeah, you always had.
Yes, I was.
What were you driving when we were in? I think it was in Royals days.
Yeah. So AAA. My dad bought me my very first car was a 1970 Chevelle.
Oh man, that thing was sick.
2-door green, black vinyl hardtop, and then it was $800. That's
what?
That's when my dad bought it from. $800.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
It was the coolest car.
It was cool, and then Dad pulled the engine and we rebuilt the engines. Anyways, it was a badass car.
Yeah, and nobody had cars like that.
Man.
Like everybody had their crappy little Tercel or whatever the hell it was.
You had that Jimmy.
Yeah, the Jimmy. And that was my old man helped me with that when I was 16. It was a birthday gift, and I don't think it was probably worth a couple grand.
Yep. Just so you could chauffeur yourself to hockey. That's the only reason our parents bought cars.
Oh, for sure. It was like, he had done enough chauffeuring at that point, for sure. But it's funny, and I went to it. Well, actually, I'm probably skipping ahead here, but I went to a private school. Went to West Island College. Yep. And I remember on my 16th birthday, I got this car, and I had to make some payments on it myself and whatnot. But all the kids in my school were getting like brand new BMWs and like crazy shit that no 16-year-old should be getting in their right mind. But I always felt like, I don't know, I loved that car. It was rusted.
It was cool. It's gray, right?
It was, yeah. It was a really
great.
Cool car. And I put in a killer sound system. Like you could hear me from about 5 blocks away, just bumping down the road. And it was fun. But yeah, I guess, I born and raised in Calgary. 3rd generation Calgarian. My grandfather was a developer in Calgary. And actually he built one of the first office buildings in Calgary, if not one of the first. He built I think it was the first.
Which one?
Ford Tower. And then Alpine Building, which is right next to that.
Where's Ford Tower?
Is it on 5th Avenue, I think?
No way.
I
had no idea.
Yeah, he I don't know. My grandfather was a really brilliant man, actually. He also was one of the founders of Lake O'Hara. And he was just a kind of a serial entrepreneur.
Cool.
And came from nothing, and amassed quite a portfolio of businesses, and did very, very well for himself and our family, and that was cool. So he died when I was I think it was 8, so I didn't get to really know him very well, but yeah, so third generation Calgarian, and then grew up playing hockey, as you mentioned. It was funny. I kind of was a little bit late to the game with hockey. I remember the reason I got into it was, I think it was at school in maybe grade 5 or something like that, or maybe grade 4. One of the kids in my class, Tyler Douglas, did you ever know him?
I do remember that name.
Yeah. And he won a hockey trophy. And,
way.
he was playing Elbow Park hockey or whatever, and he got this hockey trophy and he brought it to school for whatever reason. And I remember,
like show and tell or something.
Yes, exactly, something like that. And I saw, and I was so fucking jealous. And I remember I'm like, I want a trophy, and so I'm like, I want to play hockey. It's my quickest way to a trophy is playing hockey, so I'm gonna do that. And I told my dad, and I think he wanted me to play hockey anyway. But he made my mom, I believe, this is all kind of hindsight, but I think I know the truth behind all this. I think he promised my mom that he would never put me in hockey.
Gotcha.
She didn't want me in that sport. She didn't want me involved with it for whatever reason, protective, I guess.
Yeah.
And he snuck me off to a registration and signed me up. And I remember, I was just a very young kid, right? But I remember us getting home from registration and my mom and my dad having a little conversation, and I don't think they talked for a while after that.
Crickets around the house.
Yeah, exactly. But I remember, the first tryout, I think I'd skated maybe like one time, and threw me out, got me a bunch of gear, threw me out on the ice, and I could, my ankles were on the ice. I could barely skate. I was falling all over the place. And so I made the last team, Division 14 or whatever, if there was such a thing. It was as bad as you could get. And, within that year, the next year I was on the first team.
Crazy.
Yeah, it was really, I don't know what it was, but I was just like possessed by the sport. I just loved it. I loved skating. I picked it up fast. I was always pretty good with athletics. I seemed to be pretty good at the things I put my focus and energy into. And so I just remember, and actually Scott King, he brought his name up. Dave King was the Flames. No, but at that time he was the Team Canada coach. And I guess he knew my dad. My dad knew him. And he started giving me like some private kind of lessons, I guess you might say.
Cool.
I'd go to these skates with Scott, and Scott actually kind of took me under his wing, and I mean he was like a prodigy at that
he was
point.
crazy.
He was
crazy.
Like next level good hockey player. And so I guess just by virtue of hanging out with those guys and being around Dave, and got pretty good pretty fast. And and so that was kind of how it all started. And then probably met you shortly thereafter. And, and then kind of worked my way up through Pee Wee, and then got into Royals. And I remember when I was probably 13 or 14. When you're AAA, what is that? What age
Midget
is that?
AAA?
Yeah.
We were like 16, 17.
16, 17. So I remember...
We were driving.
Yeah. And remember the blue Royal coats?
Yeah,
the
leather
vinyl,
ones.
black, blue vinyl, like... worst things ever.
But everybody knew what they were.
They were the greatest thing ever. You were the coolest. If you had one of those things, oh my God, you were the man. And so I remember seeing somebody wearing one of those, and I was like, well, I'm going to be like, I've got to get one of those. I got to be on that team. And AAA was like the pinnacle. And I remember maybe for a year, every night before I went to bed, I like basically prayed to be on the AAA midget team.
Crazy.
Yeah, it was weird. Nobody told me to do that. I was like, it was like I was praying. I was asking, please, for this gift. And, I was like, I'll give up everything. I just want that. That's the only thing that matters in my whole life. And, and then I made the AAA midget team, and that was cool. And, got my blue coat. And, Did we play midget together?
Yep.
Yeah, we were on the trips
One
together.
year,
Yeah. That stupid part.
Yeah.
Oh man, that
Pepperdome.
That was funny. Yeah, and then so played there and enjoyed that. In the meantime, I grew up on horses. My folks have a place in Bragg Creek, and sort of grew up on horses at a very young age. I was very, very involved with, not equestrian. It was just kind of Western, just sort of, trail riding and whatnot, but got a little bit into cattle penning and things like that. So hockey kind of engulfed my life.
It's like all consuming to a certain age, right? Like, it's everything.
It is. I mean, I guess from the day I kind of got into Division 14, right through to the day I stopped playing, which would have been university hockey.
Yep.
It was everything.
Yep.
Yeah, it was
like there's just not a lot of time to do other things. You're just this is what you do.
That was it.
Yep.
Yeah, and I mean, like, you couldn't go skiing. Yep. Like, it was off limits. So I never really developed that part of. I loved skiing. It was something I did really, really young in life and really loved it. But you were never allowed to go because you might get injured or and that was just not acceptable.
Yep.
So yeah, it was all consuming. And then even on the off season, like, you were training. So it was it's
always on your mind.
Still all consuming.
Yep.
Yeah.
And when do you once you're kind of done playing, it's all consuming for all these years. It's kind of everything you know.
Yep.
When you're done playing, where was your head going, and then to kind of figure out the next direction? Did you have a plan, or did you have to figure it out on the fly?
Oh, I definitely had to figure it out on the fly. And I mean, looking back, like, I don't know, what is it? I was 25 maybe when I stopped. Like, I was a young 25, I think. Like, I'd been so involved in hockey, and I mean, even academics were like, I was basically only there to play hockey, and I did pretty well, but I did the bare minimum, and I did okay.
Yep.
But I don't know why. I don't know if I knew I wasn't making the NHL, like, at that point. I guess at one point it was a dream, but even in junior, I knew I wasn't going to go to the NHL, but it still was all encompassing. It's what I knew. And so when it stopped, I mean, that was a revelatory kind of moment, actually. But I think, like, I stopped in junior. I stopped loving the sport. At my last year of junior was when I, like, didn't love it anymore. It lost I lost my passion for it.
Yep.
And I can pinpoint why that was. And this is one thing that I don't know, maybe I was kind of a sensitive kid, like, I took things very personally. I did, criticisms really kind of, were something that I didn't take lightly.
Yep.
And sort of my last year of junior, I was pretty highly touted. In my second year junior, I was highly touted, prospect, for U.S. universities and things like that.
Yep.
And then my last year junior, a new coach came in. He stripped my C. He put me on the fourth line. I was not in the power play.
Yep.
Occasional penalty kill.
Yep.
Four shifts a period. From, like, I was double shifting. I was like,
all the opportunity.
Yeah, like, everything was good, and then new guy comes in,
Yep.
wants to switch things up, and I was like, in my last year, right? And that's the year where, like, you got to do your best.
Yep.
And so after that, I was like, basically, fuck this. This is bullshit. This guy had the ability to change my life, in a way that I didn't think was fair.
Yep.
And, looking back on it, I was good, but, like, maybe I shouldn't have been double shifted. Maybe I was. So anyway, it's all perspective, right?
Yep.
But at the time, it was like, man, it was tough.
For sure.
It was a big thing because it was my life.
Yep.
And somebody was, like, taking it away from me.
Do you think that, I had a similar experience, but a little bit different. But do you think that when one person can have that much control over your life, does that put you on a path to kind of do your own thing, to know that you don't want to allow somebody to have that kind of power over you? Like, does your brain start going there, or you were just like, I'm done with hockey, I'm just gonna not think about anything?
No, that's actually a really, really, really good point and a great question. And I think I was not conscious of it, and probably maybe not even conscious of it until you just said that. But yeah, definitely. Because I think from that moment forward, things changed. Definitely that was a pivotal moment for sure. And I think you're absolutely right. And so I was done with hockey when my last year junior, and I had some opportunities to go down to the States, but they were like kind of tier 2 schools, and I'm like, I'm not going to a tier, it's not worth it.
Yep.
And I didn't have the passion anymore. I knew that. I was done with hockey basically. And then coaching, and I was coming back to Calgary. I'm like, I'm going to go promise my dad I would go to university no matter what. So that was a promise. He's like, I don't care what you do, you are going to university.
No, why do you think that is? Why was he? And this is my parents never said it, so I'm really curious. Like, why do you think your dad said that? What was he angling towards?
I think my old man was angling towards you need an education to further yourself in life, and if there's, my dad never made me do anything. He was always allowing me to make my own decisions.
Yep.
This is the one thing he was like, I don't care where you go. I don't, and he's like, you don't have to worry about paying for it. I'm taking care of your education. But the one non-negotiable is you're going to university. And so, and I knew that early in life. I don't know why it was instilled early, you're going to university.
Yeah.
And so I came home after my last year junior, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to, U of C or Mount Royal.
Yep.
And I don't know, think around for a year and figure out what I want to do.
Take general studies and kind of.
Yeah. I mean, I went into business, right away. And, I don't know. I knew I wanted to be in business in some capacity, but no clue of what my calling was, you might say. And so, so the coach at Mount Royal reached out to me, Ryan Bishard. Do you remember Bish?
Little Bish, yeah.
Yeah. He so I played with him, and he was at Mount Royal, and he talked to the coach and said, "Well, you got to get this."
What's
kid
that guy's name? That coach?
Scott Atkinson.
He was there forever.
Yeah, awesome guy.
Yeah.
Awesome.
When I went to Mount Royal.
Yeah.
One of my 3 times I was in and out.
Yeah.
He was one of my teachers, and it was like a health and relaxation class.
Yeah.
And I swear to God, it was like this elective, and we just lied on these mats, and he would talk, and we would like close our eyes and meditate.
He was an interesting guy. This is getting me fired up to reach out to him now, but very interesting guy. Because the year before I went to Mount Royal, he got suspended from the league. Because he climbed over the boards and beat up his fan or something.
I remember that.
He got into some big shit. And I don't even know the details, but he was kicked out of hockey basically. Yep. And he was back the year I was coming into university, and he reached out to me, basically scouted me and kind of brought me in. He's like, and I was like, nah, I'm done. I'm not really into hockey. He's like, well, okay, I get that. Why don't you just come and skate with the guys? Just come out and shoot the puck around. Yep. We're just going to have a couple shinny games before training camp starts or whatever. And I'm like, all right, sure, whatever. Can't hurt. I've been playing beer league all summer. Might as well. Yeah. And I go out there and had a blast. And all the guys like Bishard and those, guys I played some junior with or grew up with and with the Royals and whatnot, they were there. Yep. And I kind of thought Mount Royal was kind of shitty hockey and but it wasn't. I got out there and there were some good players, really, really good hockey players. And so he kind of had me after that first shinny game. Awesome. And and then I played at Mount Royal for I think 3 years. We won a national title there. Cool. And then I guess after I think 3 years, what
were you taking? What were
at Mount Royal?
It was business, but was it?
It was the business transfer to U of C.
Oh yeah, okay.
I don't remember. It was but it was the general business transfer program, and then I minored in poli-sci because I had this kind of idea in the back of my head that I wanted to become a lawyer, and I wrote my LSATs and, was basically signed up to go into law and pulled the pin on that. Thank fucking
Good
God.
move.
Oh my God. That would have been the worst fucking occupation for me. I could not imagine a worse occupation.
No.
Not for me, but I, and it's funny because you look back on that and I kind of think of it as maybe kind of where my headspace was at. And I think I was going into law for this idea that it was like this glamorous, profession, and I'm going to make a bunch of money and like all the wrong reasons basically to get into something.
Yep.
So fortunately I kind of I don't know how I got talked out of it, but I did, and went to U of C and did another pretty much useless degree, and entrepreneurship was my major.
That was the thing back then?
Yeah.
No way.
Oh, it still is. Yeah, it's still.
It just seems early. I didn't think that conversation was happening back in whenever that was.
Yeah, I
Was
don't
that,
even
like,
remember what year that was.
early 2000s-ish, maybe?
Yeah. Yeah, it was. It was a degree, a major, and I took entrepreneurship. Our class was small. There was like, I don't know, 30 graduates or whatever.
And did you decide to go into that versus, general business stuff? Like, how are you even thinking? What are you thinking about at that time if you want to be your own boss? Like, what were you?
I kind of always, I don't know what it is, but I think I always felt like I was not an employee type, and I never saw myself as one. And I always saw myself doing something on my own. And I don't know why, or maybe it's from my grandfather, such a kind of entrepreneurial kind of energy.
Yep.
His myth,
he had a big presence.
Big presence. Yeah. And just like, he was a bigger than life kind of guy. And maybe just the idea of him was sort of stuck in my head.
Yep.
And I always had visions and ideas of things. And, this, I guess, theme has always been doing things differently, doing things at a very high level. I'm a perfectionistic guy. It's, definitely a double-edged sword in my life. But it's, it's very good in a lot of ways. And it's actually one of those things that makes me extremely good at what I do now.
Yep.
But being an entrepreneur, like, I just never saw myself like just being employed, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with being employed.
Nope.
Like, I couldn't do shit without my employees.
Exactly.
I'm nothing without them. Yeah. So I don't even think of them as employees. They're like partners in a way.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't for me. I had to blaze my own trail.
So then you graduated from that program?
Yeah.
And then where'd you go?
Yeah, so I graduated from, I got my BCom and with a minor in poli-sci.
Just so random.
Yeah, again, totally useless degrees.
It's cool you finished something because I didn't finish anything. I'm just laughing because I know you. I'm like, a poli-sci. I'm just like, there's no, but those dots aren't there.
They're not at all. It was all like, but I loved poli-sci. I love writing. It's like something I really enjoy. Was quite good at from a very young age. I like politics. I don't like politics today, but I like the idea of politics. I like the idea of policy. I like the idea of like society and growth and evolution of society. And these are all things that I've always thought about my whole life, really. And so the idea of so when I graduated, I was like, okay, I'm going to basically take a year off. I'm going to go travel. I did the whole backpack through Thailand and all that shit, and had some fun times doing that. A lot of us have. Yeah,
not surprising.
yeah, that was some good times I'll never forget for sure. But got back and I got a job building decks and fences for a local company.
Just
to pay the
make
bills.
some cash.
Yeah, actually, I was framing houses with Fizel. Remember Chris?
Yeah.
He was my best friend. We were like inseparable, and love that guy. And he and I, he got me a job framing houses with him.
You had no experience?
None.
Like
None.
hammers?
Well, so I had no experience before framing houses.
Okay.
No, actually, that's wrong. Sorry, I worked on a ranch for 3 years.
Okay.
And so this was my first like real job, and this was a summer job.
Mm-hmm.
The off season from hockey. My dad was really good friends with a rancher.
Yep.
And he had this huge piece of land, and actually part of it's in Calgary, in the southeast corner of the city. And he needed a ranch hand, just a guy to go around and fix fences and tend to livestock. And so I got into that for the summers, and I learned how to swing a hammer there, fix things, being problem solving on the fly and whatnot. And so when I did that for 3 summers, and then kind of grew out of that, and my buddy Chris Fizell was like, "Oh, you can come frame with us, and it pays pretty well, and this and that." And so started doing that with him in the summers, and then I kind of progressed into, I got in with this sort of landscape construction company, and building decks and fences. And I remember I showed up my first day. Actually, I was golfing with the guy who was like the general manager or whatever, and with an ex-girlfriend, his father, who knew this guy, and anyway, we were golfing. He's like, "Yeah, why don't you come work for us?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" And so I show up, and I think he gave me it was $15 an hour or something,
Which was pretty good back then.
Oh fuck, it was huge. I was getting paid $8 an hour, and like $8 was pretty good. And like, so he's like, "Yeah, we'll give you 15." I was like, "Holy shit, like I'm rolling in dough now." Like I'm living large.
That makes money.
Yeah, exactly. So I started doing that, and within a week I was kind of running my own crews, and so I was kind of like a little entrepreneur within the company.
Yep.
And that went on for 2 years, and I went to the owner of the company kind of midway through the season on my second year, and I knocked on the door, and I basically was asking for a raise and a little bit more autonomy, and he just basically ripped me apart and stripped me down and told me I was a piece of shit, and how dare I come into his office. And it fueled me to start my own business. So, awesome. and actually the fuel around that was I was going to take him fucking down. It's like, I was pissed.
Crazy.
Yeah. And so he built a fire in me.
And was it like, did you walk out of that office with no job?
Yeah. I was like, I fucking quit. Like, fuck you. Mm-hmm. Basically, I was like, here's your shit. I'm out of here. Mm-hmm. Got in my car, went home. Asked for a loan from my dad. Mm-hmm. Next day went and bought, I think I got a $2,000 loan. Mm-hmm. Went and bought all my own tools, got a shitty old pickup truck, $500 pickup truck. I got a credit card, line of credit for the business. My mom's was a graphic designer. She's an artist. Crazy. And so she helped me design my logo. Cool. She actually came up with a name, which is hilarious.
What was it?
Decks in the City.
Right.
So this is what Sex in the City was like a big thing, and my mom came up with that shit. It was a pretty funny name. Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, fuck man, it is a good name.
Totally.
I'm kind of embarrassed about it now.
No, it's awesome.
Yeah, it was. I mean, people remembered it
for sure.
And so right away, made some flyers, went around the neighborhoods, just dropping them off, and got pretty busy pretty fast. Yeah.
How many years did you run that?
Well, that business, so it started like literally I was making square box decks and fences, like just making money basically. And pretty quickly I, got pretty good at that. And, I did it by myself for the first bit. I was doing all the work by myself. And then I went to Mount Royal with, kind of joined the team. And so he was my first employee, and basically a drinking buddy, and,
hanging out,
more or less,
building,
but
sun-tanning.
It was all about the tan, man, all about the tan, and we had fun. He was a hard worker. I was too. Fucking worked our asses off.
And you guys did some crazy things. Like I caught up with you. I don't know how many years you've been doing it, but I remember we were talking at Rona one day in a parking lot, and I can't remember what you were talking about, the woods you were using, and it was just like super obscure and high end. Like you started off doing just regular box stuff, and it evolved quickly into the amazing pieces you were doing.
That's right.
It was was fancy stuff, wasn't it?
Yeah, very. Yeah, and yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, because it didn't last long. Like the square box thing, like lost its appeal very fast. And really, like I get a lot of pleasure even today. It's the thing that drives me is that sort of once I complete something, like looking at something I made it and completed. I get a lot out of that.
Yep.
It's really why I do what I do now. And so, but you build enough boxes, you're like, okay, fuck, I'm over this. I got to evolve past it. So always thinking of ways to make it better and different. And like, okay, we don't just do boxes. We do boxes with like curves in them. And, we do these things that nobody else does. And, so that started pretty quickly. I, probably like 4 or 5 boxes into it. I started
You're ready.
just doing things differently and, sourcing out. So I found a guy who was bringing in, Brazilian exotic hardwoods.
That's what it was.
Yeah. And I was like his first client and, it was just an idea for him. And now he's done really well for himself. He's still doing it today.
Yep.
Crazy Jim.
Wild.
Shout out to Crazy Jim. Yeah. But, and then so started offering these like really beautiful outdoor spaces.
Gorgeous.
Involved into something really, really amazing actually. And, and so we started doing the Calgary Home and Garden Show.
Yep.
And I did it 3 years in a row, and all 3 years we won the best booth. And like I did crazy shit. Like looking back, I'm like, what the fuck was I thinking?
Like way over the top.
Oh, like insane amount of energy and time, but it was like art for me. Like I wasn't putting my name on it if it wasn't going to be the best.
Yep. And
so like, it was going to be the best because I wasn't going to let it be anything else than that. So I had this vision, and I'm talking like working straight through the night, like for weeks on end to prepare something for this show. And then we'd put it up and people would be like, holy fuck, like, wow, like nobody does this kind of shit. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. That's why I'm doing it. And then, the show's over and we basically tore it up and threw it in the garbage. I did that 3 years in a row, and they just got bigger and more elaborate every year. And, it's just kind of my nature to do things like that. So, yeah.
And how many years did you run that company?
So it was a really, really small business that turned into like not a big business, but decent size. I think we had like 15 employees at one point, and 4 crews of guys, and a bunch of equipment and bobcats and a shop and all that kind of stuff. And we sort of parlayed into doing renovations, kind of started getting to that business.
Oh, okay.
Really focused on exterior spaces.
Yep.
But what we do this incredible work, and actually in the design kind of integrated into that as well. And so I started really designing these spaces for clients as part of like our service offering. And so I designed the exterior environment, and then we'd build it, and that's how we'd get compensated. But started realizing like there's a lot of value in the design part, and that like I'm not actually like even being compensated for this. So I started charging for that service.
It's on top of. So here's the design package, and here's the build package.
Yeah, exactly. And so the design package was, and then I started like, I really enjoyed building things. Like, got a lot of pleasure out of, again, the idea that turns into a tangible thing was like something that I really get a lot out of and still do to this day. But the idea of actually like formally designing a space, I became really passionate about that.
Was it out of left field? Like,
yeah.
From listening to the story, which is why I love doing this.
Yeah.
Like poli-sci, lawyer,
all over the
playing
map.
hockey.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden you get this spark to create. So it seems.
But
then you say your mom's a graphic designer, so then I'm like, oh, it's in there somewhere.
It's in the DNA for sure. And the funny thing is like, when I was really young, I'd say like in junior high, there was always a sort of design flair to me, I guess you might say. I'd always wear different things.
Yep.
Like I went to a private school and we all had to wear the same uniforms, but like, I was wearing suspenders, like
you just push it a bit.
Yeah. And like nobody wore suspenders, but I was like wearing like really like detail oriented, like crazy little patterns. And, I'd wear like I don't know, I just wear little things that like, you know, I could get away with, you know, and like even our socks had to be a certain color, but I'd like do something to them. Yeah, I'd like
a little pattern with the same
exactly.
color.
I'd always push it. And so and then when I wasn't at school, I was, you know, fashion was important to me, and I never really realized it, but I had this dream of being like a fashion designer.
Wild.
Yeah, and like this is when I was like 13, 14 years old, and like
crazy.
Yeah, and like that wasn't a possibility. Are you kidding me?
Well, and it's not, you know, it might have been, but when you're that deep into the hockey world, those worlds really don't mesh.
They do not. You couldn't find two more polar opposite, fashion design and hockey, or
So-
you know, or framing houses and a ranch hand, like Brokeback Mountain stuff.
Totally. So, but it's like, but that's part of it too, right?
Yeah.
Like you might have these little, and you and I are similar. Like I'm a creative person, and playing hockey, there's not that outlet. There's little moments to have it, but really, when you're in that world, it wasn't frowned upon. It just wasn't normal.
No,
You know,
it
like,
wasn't normal. That was the thing. You weren't fitting in.
Yeah.
You weren't fitting the mold.
Yep.
And I've never felt like I fit the mold. I've always felt an outsider.
Yep.
In that way, and still do to this day.
Yep.
I'm more comfortable in my skin around it. I'm okay with it now.
Yep.
But I wasn't. You know, it was weird.
For sure, man.
It felt weird. I'm like, what is this?
What am I doing?
And so yeah, I'm doing things like framing houses and like playing hockey, and like, you know, my second year of junior hockey, I became like the team fighter. I was the tough guy, you know, like I am a lover, man. I am a lover. I am not a fighter. And I was, you know, I was every game I was getting stitches and black eyes,
So
and
weird,
handing them out to other people, you know, and so just, kind of a dichotomy, you might say, of identity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. But then all of a sudden the design skill or the design talent in you wants to
Come
like,
out.
Here's an outlet.
Yeah.
Like I can start designing these beautiful outdoor spaces.
Yes. Yeah. And it really, so like turning a square box deck into something that was like a little work of art, you know, and maybe I only noticed the work of art. Maybe
They were elaborate. They were elaborate.
They were elaborate.
I'm not like, I don't know much about, you know, I understand the construction world, and I've seen your stuff, and I knew right. It was like way in a different ballgame.
Yeah, I was doing crazy shit.
Yeah.
Like I was getting inspiration from, you know, crazy interiors. I'm like, okay, well, how can I do this outside in Calgary, which is like the most crazy outdoor
3 months of the year.
Yeah. And I mean, like our winters are insane. And like, you know, where you're dealing with natural materials that shrink and swell and like, you know, crack and, you know, do all these things. You can't do like fine, refined detailing like you can interiors.
Yep.
But I was doing them, and, you know, doing them in a way that was like really good quality that would last forever. And so, so my kind of, I guess my obsession, it is an obsession with quality and doing things differently, and, you know, taking a real kind of artist's approach. An artisan and artist approach to what I was doing was something that became clear pretty early. So like that was part of the deck thing. And then, you know, we started this design service thing, definitely obviously started moving from the outdoors into interior environments.
Yep.
And at that point I hired a draftsman, and he came onto the team. So like all of a sudden, like, you know, I was drafting, but, you know, I was pretty novice.
Yep.
But, you know, it was good that I learned those skills and would, you know, have an understanding of it. But, you know, felt like I had to have somebody help me on the production side of things. And so I hired a drafter, and then, you know, Shaun Ford Design came to be, and that took over.
What year was that? Do you remember?
Well, let's see, 2006. Yeah, 2007, somewhere around there.
Oh, it's been a run.
Yeah, so that, you know, we were a design company, and then I also had decks in the city still, and, you know, it was a bit of a machine that was like bringing in reoccurring revenues, and, you know, was operating quite well as a profitable company, and but my focus wasn't there anymore. It was like, okay, like that's great. I need this thing to work on its own because I need to focus on design. I love this. I'm passionate about it. And so that became everything. And so we just started designing spaces. And again, it was starting to move indoors, from the outdoors into the indoors. And pretty soon into that business, I realized that, we could come up with a beautiful design, and then we'd come back to get pictures of the space, and the client would have filled the space with like really shit product, basically just like crappy furniture.
Yep.
And like, no real, it basically became such that like I couldn't take the pictures. I couldn't really capture what we had created, because it was like now look like shit, basically. And so at that moment I decided, okay, well, I'm not going to let this happen again. I'm going to have some control over the final product. And so I started sourcing products, and that's where a whole new evolution of my business and my kind of reason of being came to be.
And what's interesting, you said it a little bit earlier too, you'd already done it once by sourcing the wood. So it's like, the fun thing about looking back is seeing the patterns.
Yep.
And whether you know them or not, I'm just listening to them. But it's, you found that bamboo, whatever it was, that crazy bamboo.
Yep.
Because you needed a solution to what you were trying to figure out. And same thing.
Well,
so now you start sourcing stuff.
Yeah, and the status quo, like, I hate status quo. Like, I hate the same. Like, everything I do is like, okay, if other people are doing this, then I have to do it differently. That's just, I've been that way since I was born. Yep. And so, like, the wood thing is a perfect example of that. And I went looking for this, and it appeared, and I found this thing, and it made my product that much better. Yep. And so, exactly the same thing. And so, I started looking to Europe, and I started going to trade shows, and going to Italy to Salone del Mobile, which is the biggest design show in the world. And I went there
just for inspiration, or to inspiration and physically find products you wanted to import.
Yeah, like, I'm a treasure hunter, so I'm always looking, always looking. When I was traveling Thailand, I was looking for things. I was like, what can I find that I can bring over that nobody's seen? That's so this was part of the treasure hunting. But I don't know if I went there for a specific reason to find things. I think I did, but when I got there and I saw, my world blew up. Everything changed from that moment forward. I saw the light. Right. Like, I could never turn back after that. So, and I haven't since. It's still it's a quest to always find special, beautiful. Yeah, always.
And then, so how did it evolve? Like, when you hire the drafter, and then you're all in on that side now, the kind of interior. Well, how do you want to? It's like the interior designs, or how, like,
architectural design, and I wouldn't call this.
It's an interesting. Like, I can't put a word to it.
Yeah,
because you're combining a couple things.
Yes. And even my business today, it's like a hard thing to define, actually, because it isn't classic model of business. It's unique, it's different, and it's me. That's the business. Yeah. It's me, and I have a team around me that does all the shit I cannot do, or I do very poorly. Yep. And they're masters in their areas. And so, it's a hard thing. So the whole melding of like, we went from kind of architectural design, and sort of, it was just an obvious kind of evolution to get into interiors. Yep. And being in Calgary, you couldn't just do exteriors. There's not enough of a season. Yep. So it just automatically, it was an obvious natural evolution into interiors. Yeah. So
how would you explain what it is you're up to now? So your business right now is interesting to me, because I get to watch it from a distance. But explain kind of what you're really up to.
Well, 2010, we opened our first kind of studio showroom. And that's when I had been to Italy a few times. I'd been to, trade shows in New York, and, big Toronto and Vancouver, and kind of gotten a look at what's out there in the world and what we did not have here in Calgary. And so, the whole idea behind that first showroom was, okay, like, I've now seen the light. I know what's out there. I have clients that would happily use these products. They, you know, they have the money and the wherewithal to go down that road.
Yep.
And, you know, they don't know, because how would they know?
Yeah, it takes
There's
a lot of
nothing
effort.
here.
To source this stuff takes a lot of effort.
It does. Yeah. And I mean, and you know, the logistics around it all, the, you know, and I mean, there's no formula to follow. It's all, you know, blazing my own trail.
Yep.
There's nobody else here really doing it. There was, and that's not true. There were a couple guys, but you know, again, I saw us doing things differently. So, we opened this showroom or studio space in, I think, 2009, 2010. And
so it was like 3-4 years from when you kind of started.
Yeah. And, you know, yeah, so I'd say a couple years we were just doing design, and then I realized, okay, we need to get products into the mix here.
Yep.
And, you know, I was offering outdoor products, like, you know, really high-end outdoor furniture and, like, you know, fire pits and like fireplaces for outdoor environments. And then I'm like, okay, well, I got to get inside that too. And so then started sourcing those things. And so we opened the space, and it was like a warehouse in, you know, on Farrell Road, you know, in Blackfoot Industrial. Yep. And next door to us was like a coffee wholesale company. And then like a plumber was like across the road from us. And, you know, we opened this design oasis. We created this little crazy, beautiful little space. And, no marketing or anything. We just did it and, had a party, and, business just started flowing. You know, there's no marketing at all. And started getting projects, started getting work, and it went really well, like pretty fast actually. And this is when the financial crisis happened in the States in 2008, I think. And I thought, shit, we opened the doors right when that happened, and I thought, okay, we're basically fucked.
It's over.
Yeah, we're fucked. Like, I'm like, day one, all right, you know, whatever I did have and had accumulated at that point has been sunk into this thing, and now it's gone.
Yep.
And fortunately, that didn't happen. We got some good projects, and, you know, it just kind of grew from there.
Cool.
You know, and then I think we had a 4 or 5 year lease. At the end of that lease, it was a moment, okay, do we renew, stay here, or do we kind of step it up to the next level?
Yep.
And that was the moment where I decided to get our showroom on 11th Avenue here.
Did you know, right, like, you know, when the lease is kind of coming to an end, did you know right away what your move was going to be? We're taking us to the next level?
I had been looking, yes, and I always want to be growing and going higher and bigger and evolving upwards. You know, it's always, I'm not very good at staying in one place, to my detriment in some ways, I think. But always have to be moving and growing, spiritually, you know, monetarily, you know, just growth is very important to me in every way. So, I mean, always have a vision of the next thing. And so that was in that old space. That was something for sure. But, you know, I didn't know what it was. I didn't know. And then, you know, the lease was coming up, and I started looking around and found the kind of perfect space. And, I mean, it was like 5 times the size. It was prime real estate in kind of the prime real estate area in Calgary for retail kind of space in the design district. And so, I went for it. And another story again, like as soon as, you know, the space itself was quite a project, because it was, I wanted to make this like a world-class space where somebody from New York or Italy could come walk in here and be like, oh shit, like I want them to be blown away with this in Calgary. And we did that. We did that successfully, you know, like, you know, I think anybody who'd been into the 11th Ave showroom would probably say that it was a really, really beautiful space, of something I was very proud of. And, but we opened that space, that literally pulled the papers off the windows the day of the flood.
No way.
Yeah. The day of the flood was the day we turned the sign to open on that 11th Ave showroom. And so we pulled the shit off the windows. We knew it was coming, right? Like, you remember the build up before the flood?
Yeah.
And, but like I don't think anybody ever really thought it was actually going to happen.
Not the way it did.
Not that level, right? So, and I was living right on the river at that point too. And I was like So in the afternoon, they basically told everybody in the certain neighborhoods to go home and pack your shit up and like go live with like loved ones elsewhere kind of thing. And so, yeah, I'm like, and we were, our showroom was in the potential flood zone. And I'm like, okay, we're fucked again. Yeah, okay, so like there's a trend here. And so and ironically, that flood actually ended up being a catalyst for our business that was really good for business.
Just based on some of the people that lost all their
Yeah. I mean, somebody had to do the work, right? Sure. And the target demographic that we're working with were the people who were most directly affected.
Yep.
And so all of a sudden we have this huge demand for exactly what we had opened our doors to do.
Yep.
And so it was really, really great for a long time with that sort of flood business, which ended up a lot of people got to recreate their homes, and they obviously nobody wants to go through a flood to do that, but it ended up being really beneficial. And
you can't plan for any of this, can you? You and I talked about this a little bit before we got on camera here, but just maybe it's good to have a vision of some sort. Yeah, but it's almost impossible. Maybe some people they can't. Maybe you and I can't just like write it down and have the exact plan. Yeah, because it feels too. We're kind of handcuffed. Yes. It's kind of, you can't plan what you went through.
No, and I know I couldn't. And like the way things have unfolded for me, I could never have written that script. Like what I do now, what I'm doing, who I am, like I'm a completely different human from who I was when I was the fighter on my junior hockey team. Totally. Like I'm a completely different human. I could never have seen myself where I am today. Yep. And no vision would have made that happen. So for me, it's been an unfolding and a kind of a realization of like who I really am. And it's been kind of a long, arduous process and a kind of a trial by error. And, I think some people I'm really kind of, I don't know if jealous is the right word, but those people who just at a really young age know who they are.
Yeah, like I'm going to be a vet.
Right.
Those people.
Yeah. And they don't waver. They're like, this is what I'm doing. I know it.
And they do it.
Yeah. And they've known that since they were, I guess if I look back, like there's little breadcrumbs, the design, wanting to be a fashion designer when I was like 12. Yep. Like, I don't know what was that, and now I know what it was. Totally. It
all when you step back now, and all the dots are on the board. Yeah, it really makes sense.
It does. But like I don't know if I got like off course. I think it was all really important for my development, and I think I learned all these things like framing houses. If I knew I was going to be a designer, I would never have been framing houses. Wouldn't have even occurred to me.
But now when you're on job sites,
I can speak the language. I know, I understand. And this is another thing is like, I understand structure. Like I have a kind of an engineering mind a little bit. And that came from like early age problem solving around like fixing fences on a ranch and like, framing houses and putting backing in walls and why, and like, why are you putting an L in a corner, and like, why are you putting this many pieces of 2x10 for a header, and like, just understanding that through doing the work. Yep. And so, all that, and then owning my own company and like sort of learning how to operate this tiny little construction company and, working with clients, but also working with employees, and, in a kind of a transient, difficult environment. Construction isn't necessarily a kind of a industry where you think of, you get all types, right? Yep. You get them all. And so I've, even just working with all types has been very, very important to my development as a leader.
It's so strange, and I think having like a creative soul to you, that clear path of I'm going to be a vet was never really going to be a thing. No, and for me, and I'll be curious to hear what you think, but I always felt not lost, but kind of confused. Yeah, back then, like a creative person, there wasn't a lot of outlets.
No,
You know, there wasn't graphic design. There wasn't
No.
like, there's maybe interior design, but there wasn't a lot of
not in my world.
creative jobs.
I didn't even know that was a thing until way into it.
But you always knew there was a vet, there was a doctor, there was a lawyer.
Yes.
But yeah, as a creative person, it takes a while to get on your path to like figure out what you're good at and what you want to do.
Well, especially when there's no, mentorship or mold or, and in a place like Calgary, I don't, I think this is changing. I think, we're evolving in a lot of ways. But like, Calgary, you wouldn't look to Calgary as like, we're not like a creative hub, you would say. I mean, in some ways, I guess we are, but
there's like
entrepreneurially, like business wise, I think, and again, there's a lot more of it now.
Yep.
But growing up, like
Never.
wasn't a creative hub at all.
No.
Even like a place like Edmonton, I think of as a much more creative environment. And so I grew up. Thank God for my mom. She's in the clouds creative. Like she's on another level.
No way.
She floats around in the atmosphere. My dad's like grounded, like, and my mom's like floating around up there with the fairies.
Oh, so you're
So I got, and I got both of them.
Yeah, you're right in there.
I'm somewhere in the middle. I'm probably a little more up here, but it was acting more down here.
Yep.
I'm really grateful for all of it.
Did you know that? Did you know, when did you put that together? The combination of you have both and it's flip-flopped over the last. Can you always see that? Do you always know that?
Yeah. Well, I didn't always know that. That's for sure. But like, I always thought I was like, okay, like, construction guy, like
guy's guy,
hockey fighter guy, like, shotgun and beers guy. Like,
yeah.
And like none of that is me at all. But there's just some of that, I guess, in me. But I am a creative thinker. I'm a visionary. I like to think outside the box. I like, I've always known that, but I always felt dissuaded from going down that road. And nobody told me I can't. I self-imposed.
There was no examples of somebody going down that path.
None except for my mom.
Yeah.
But again, like
it's your mom, so you gotta like.
It's my mom. Yeah, I like
is this really
my crazy mom. It's like it's different, right?
Yeah.
But she was a huge role model for me in that, and I think actually just her eye is probably one of the biggest things that, like, I don't know if I just came by it through my genes or. Yeah. If it was taught to me, and I think it's probably a combination of the two.
Yeah, even like her choices, what she put around you.
Yes.
Like you probably just picked up on those cues.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure she didn't sit you down and explain.
No.
Why this works here, and here's like.
Well, she doesn't operate that way. She just does. And her just doing is something that I've developed in myself as well.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I say this every single time, but. I could talk to you forever just because, you and I go way back, and it's how you've been operating your businesses over the years is inspiring for me to watch because you're a creative dude, and there's not a lot of creative people around that are doing what they love and successful at it. So anyways, we could go on forever. We should cut this. I should put a bow on it. The way I like to end the show is it's called the Calgary Sessions. I ask all my guests that when I say the word Calgary, where does your head go, or how would you answer that?
Well, the classic answer, I hate to say it because it's cliche, but like, the Stampede. Immediately my mind goes there.
Yeah.
And all of the years, like the Stampede is everything. It's like there's Christmas and, it's underneath Stampede, for me. Like Christmas is an important time of the year, but Stampede is a whole nother level. I love it. I've never missed a Stampede until this year. We were forced to.
Yeah.
That I can remember anyway. The Flames. I don't know. It's part of our DNA as a culture, as a city. I grew up watching those guys, and the Lanny McDonalds and the Jim Poplinskis and the Hakan Loobs. like you can't be a Calgarian, a real Calgarian, without that in you. Calgary, the mountains.
Yep.
That's a huge part of what we are. And I think, we're a very entrepreneurial city. And, I think the entrepreneurial spirit here is strong. And, I look forward to seeing what the city has to offer over the years to come.
It's really cool. I get to ask the same question to all these different characters. And so when there's a trend that happens, right? Mm-hmm. So far, everyone's born and raised here. And eventually, the Stampede, I don't know if it's come up yet, but what has come up is that entrepreneurial spirit. And some people use the word resilience, resiliency. And it's, there's definitely a common theme of us Calgarians that have grown up here and what we believe this city really is. So
yes,
it was cool, man.
Yeah, resilience I see that. That's a Calgary quality.
Yeah, I think
definitely.
I think it was a good friend, Mr. Hagelin, that said that.
Oh yeah, yeah. He's a good guy.
So there's another Stampede. I think the Stampede might have been that conversation too. So.
Totally, I'm sure. In fact, I see Mr. Hagelin once or twice a year, and I see him every Stampede. I know that much.
Clockwork.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Thanks for making the time, man. I really appreciate it. It was fun to do this.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
Okay, talk soon.
Okay,
later.